Welcome, everyone, to another WoTTalk. Today, I have the honor and privilege to sit down with arguably the largest Wheel of Time artist in the history of the series, Ariel Burgess. If you have Googled Wheel of Time, if you've looked in the images, she's there. That's her work largely. It's fantastic. If you want to check out more of her stuff, it's going to be linked in this video. I don't do shout outs and links at the ends, I do them at the beginning. So please check her out if you got open new tabs, but more of her works will be appearing in this video as it progresses. And I didn't slip up too much in that intro, so I'm kind of proud of that.
Woohoo.
How you doing, Ariel?
I am good. Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm doing good. It's starting to rain really heavily, so I'm afraid halfway through this episode there's going to be lightning strikes in the audio. If that's the case, I will tone down the
It's
volume for them.
ambiance.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a fantasy
So
conversation, so you need to
that
have
works.
lightning. Where's the horse in the background then? Yeah, you know.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was about to say like we need like a Trollic snarling something like that.
Yeah, I almost wore my Trolloc is my spirit animal shirt.
I didn't know those sort of thing. I haven't looked enough into Wheel of Time merch. There's a whole like community of it out there. I haven't dove into.
Yeah, Tavern Teas sold it for a little while. They did a very limited run because it wasn't popular, but I don't know, whenever you need to feel like 10 feet tall and like you could eat people, it's a good shirt to wear.
Well, awesome. So I wanted to, for people who are not familiar with your work, go ahead and just have you explain how you got involved with the series, when you first found it, when you first read it, and how your relationship with the Team Jordan kind of evolved, if you wouldn't mind kind of expanding on that.
Sure. So, like you, I am very dyslexic and I had a very hard time reading. For me, Margaret Weiss was, I started reading her Amber and Ashes book series, but it was a long dry spell before after I had read that. And then someone introduced me to The Wheel of Time. And it was the guy that I was dating. And his mother had read it to him when he was a kid. And at first, I hated it. Actually, the prologue, I was just having a lot of hard time being able to read it and get through it. But then uh, once Maureen showed up at the village, I was hooked. And then I read Eye of the World again, and from then on, I just was a fan. And so I started looking up fan art, and was having a hard time finding a lot of like accurate depictions of the characters. And so I thought, well, I'm an artist. I'll draw some of what I think they look like, and I really love detail. I love reading about, what are the specifics. And one of the amazing things that Jordan does is he goes into extreme detail.
I was about to
Sometimes,
say you found the
yeah,
perfect Arthur for that.
yeah. Well, as an artist, I love it. And a lot of people, complain about it, and I definitely will as a reader at times. I'll skim through it, like once I get the gist of it. But as an artist, when I'm actually painting this stuff, I go back and every little bit is a gold mine for me because it's every little piece that I can get to be more accurate to the vision that he was trying to create. So I just started doing fan art, and a guy commissioned me to do like a private little mini card deck for himself. And I started doing that, and I got a bit of a following on Facebook. And the official merchandiser reached out to me and said, "Hey, you want to make a real card deck?" And I was like, "This is a fake email." And then they were like, "No, we're real." And then I did a happy dance, and we signed contracts. And I've been working with Tavern Teas ever since. I think 2012 or 11. We started talking in 2011, and I was like 22 and had just started working on this series that I love so much. And we went from project, from there. And whenever I would do something, I would have to be not only approved by Tavern Teas, but approved and combed over by Bandersnatch. So
Mm,
that's the Jordan estate.
right.
So, I would talk directly with Harriet and Maria and Alan, his assistants, about all kinds of things. Like I messaged Maria at one point because I was trying to get everybody's heights right, and said, there isn't really a specific place where he says how tall everyone is. And Maria just sent me back this email, which is one of the coolest ones, was just a list of every character and all of their heights, including Trollocs. And so for me, I was like, yes, I'm gonna never get this wrong again. Um, so it is definitely frustrating when I see fans who are like, "Don't you read the book?" I'm like, "Ah, yes, you should read the book."
I've got it from the source material, guy. Like, I've got it from the actual
Right,
source.
right.
So I have to ask a follow-up question to that. Do
Mhm.
you remember the three Talvirans' heights? Because I'm now very curious.
Yeah, Matt is 6'1", Rand is 6'5" or 6'6", and I think Lan is 6'5". He's like 1 inch taller than Lan, and Perrin is 6'2" or 6'4", like in between that range.
But he's got a good 50 pounds on Rand just because,
Right.
blacksmith.
Well, and I had always pictured Matt taller because he was so lanky, taller than Perrin, and Perrin a little more stout. Like a little more squat, but no, they're all giants. Moraine is supposed to be 5'1", 5'1", 5'2", and Egwene is supposed to be 5 foot, and Nynaeve is 5'2".
Wow. Okay, you really got this stuff down.
Yeah.
That's impressive. See, I have an issue where like a lot of the characters in my own like canonical head
Hmm.
don't entirely match the descriptions in the book. Like Matt's always been short for me. I
Hmm.
don't know why. He just is.
Yeah.
Um, but that's one of the things that when it's coming to adaptations, we're all going to struggle with. And you and I are probably going to talk about this more later. But you have to be kind of bugged every time you're going to be hearing casting rumors and announcements because a lot of them I imagine aren't going to match up perfectly, and you know exactly what's wrong.
Right. Well, one of the things that I would do to get accuracy in my art is I would look up like what are the top like 4 actors or actresses that people think coincide with this character, and then I would make a kind of Frankenstein out of photos of those people into
Hmm.
kind of what I imagined, and then I would draw from that using my imagination of what I pictured as well as what the photograph creates. And that's kind of how I get all of these character art that really looks like the character. I get so many people that come back and go, wow, you ripped that right out of my head. And it's because I'm looking for what people say that they see. And sometimes they see actors that absolutely don't fit the description, and I just don't use those people. But, um, you know,
Yeah, I've made a couple casting videos, and some of the suggestions I've gotten to all my listeners, I love you, you're great, but sometimes your suggestions are terrible.
yeah.
That's just true.
Yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah, and I love my fans. They're amazing. When I was doing Matt's transition poster, and to clarify, the transition posters are one half of the piece is the character at the beginning of the series, and the other half is them towards the end.
they're spectacular. It's probably
Thank
my
you.
favorite series you've done.
Thank you. But for Matt's staff, I wanted to make Ashandre actually have the proper saying in the old tongue on the staff. And Jordan actually never wrote that out in the old tongue. So I had to make sure that I got a translation, and I couldn't find a key of all the letters from English to Old Tongue. So I went on my page and was like, "Hey guys, does someone have this?" And within like a minute, I had it, and so I could go in and actually translate the whole thing and put it on the staff. As far as I know, that's the only one out there.
Wow, that's so cool. And this is, I mean, you have, it seems like a whole network of little Wheel of Time, I want to say spies, who are willing to comb through pages and contact people to make sure it's as accurate as possible, which, from what I've seen, that's something Jordan really would appreciate. Because if you look in the back of New Spring, there's letters between him and artists, and those letters are very much so, you got the button wrong.
Yeah, yeah, and I wish I could have met him. He died a couple years after I started reading, and
Mm,
but I talked a lot with Harriet about accuracy and about what he would say and what he would think about certain things, and she definitely never held her punches
good.
on commenting.
Good. I like hearing that because it makes me hope that she won't do that for the upcoming adaptation as well. Let's
Yeah.
have those people swing hard.
Well, if you ever meet her, she's a very lovely lady, but she definitely, when you're reading the books, I can tell where he got some of the character traits from, like Moraine and Nynaeve. It's definitely Harriet, she's a strong person.
See, I had the honor of briefly meeting her at Jordan Con,
Hmm.
and I immediately shoved my foot in my mouth very deeply because I can't handle meeting people I look up to immensely. And so my first time meeting Harriet is not something I'm proud of, unfortunately.
Me too. When I met her the first time, I was very young and I had never been to a convention before. So I met her as I was signing the contracts. I had just signed them and flew out to JordanCon. Tavern Teas wrote me a couple days after we signed contracts and said, or a couple months, I don't remember. It was right before JordanCon. They said, "Hey, we have this little convention. Do you want to come? It's in 2 weeks." And I went, "Oh my God, I don't have enough money." So I talked to my mother and we went together to Georgia and she came and, I was talking to Steve, their lawyer, and Harriet for the very first time. And my first impression, I thought she was British, but she's not. She's from South Carolina. She just has a very eloquent way of speaking.
Hmm.
And my mother was in the middle of telling Steve, their lawyer, and Harriet baby stories about me drawing when I was a kid. And I was, 22 and going, "Mom, stop."
I love that. That's great. So, just how many Jordan Cons have you been to?
um, this was my eighth, I think.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah,
So I
since
it was
Jordan
my
Con 4.
first, so you got me beat by a long shot.
It happens really fast. I have several friends who have been going and they're like, "Oh yeah, this is like what, my second or third?" And I was like, "No, this is your fifth." And they're like, "What?" But it's kind of addicting. It's a
Oh yeah.
big family.
I mean, the biggest compliment I feel like I can give Jordan Con, and I mean this really, really, I do. It's the only convention I've been to that doesn't feel like it's targeted at your wallet. It feels like it's actually targeted at honoring the series, which is great.
That and making sure you're fed
Oh my
and
God, yes.
yeah, making sure that people are, they have time. It factors in humans that we have time to
Hmm.
get sleep. We have time to take a lunch and a dinner break, and the fact that they have food is amazing. Went to another
Hmm.
convention recently and they're like, "Yeah, we have the con suite. Like there's ramen." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, oh,
Compare that to Jordan Con, where they have pizza, chicken, salads, like
lox
dessert.
and bagels and
Oh
gluten-free
yeah.
options." I was like, "Ugh, I know." I always end up like being a commercial for them. So, yeah, it's a great convention, and they honor a lot of other fantasy works as well. And I had the honor of being on the Dresden Files panel this year, and I'm a huge Dresden Files fan, so that was really fun.
At risk of getting way off topic here, which I'm totally okay with if you are,
Mhm.
Dresden Files is like I love certain books and I hate certain books. Like it's one of these things where it's like either they're like a 10 for me or it's just like why did Jim Butcher do that? Like I don't know why. I have such an up and down roller coaster relationship with them.
I think some of them I'm a little more meh about, but I love that series. I feel like there's
Mhm.
almost nothing wrong with it. Um, the characters are people that I would be friends with.
Oh yeah.
I definitely feel constantly so sad for Harry. Just want to give him a
Oh
hug.
yeah.
Um, I feel that way a little bit about the Wheel of Time. There are definitely books that I could just skim or give me the cliff notes because I've read them all and just I think sometimes there were some plot points that really went nowhere. And as somebody who
Oh yeah.
struggles to read, it was like I went through this for that, you know. Um,
See, and I think that's so like okay. It's okay to acknowledge series have flaws. I've never understood this mentality where if you love a series and someone says something wrong about it, you have to just like attack that person.
right,
Nah, every series is going to have problems,
right,
especially fantasy epics that are how many entries.
right. Well,
Um,
and I still love it.
oh yeah, for sure. But the slog is real. The slog
Yeah.
exists.
Book 10. Book
Yeah.
10 and I always numbered them. I could never get the titles straight, but book 10 and book 9. Although I think book 9 has certain I know people complain about it a lot. I think it's Winter's Heart. But it has certain sections that are worth getting to. And I always tell people like wait until you're getting close to like when these characters are together because the scene is
Hmm.
worth it. I think the
I
end of
also,
every book is worth it.
oh yeah, and I also think Winter's Heart has some of the best Perrin moments hands down.
Yeah.
And so I've had people who are like, I want to skip this one. I'm like, no, do not.
No. Well, and the whole Elaine, Avienda, Min, and Brigida, like to like Brigida and them getting drunk, and like that's so funny. I would read that scene over and over. I really hope that they film it because it's probably
Oh
one of
yeah.
my favorite scenes.
It's some of the best chemistry that Robert Jordan wrote between those characters. Like those, they have some of the best dynamics as characters in the entire series
Hmm.
between them. Yeah. So I wanted to go ahead and kind of, I have a couple of things we wanted to talk about here, and one of the things, kind of just having a jarring transition. I'm very bad at transitions. You're gonna have to learn that.
That's okay.
So recently there has been a bit of a debacle with the Wheel of Time artists who have previously been signed to work with the estate,
Hmm.
and I'm sure you can put it better than I can. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to kind of dive into this topic with you a little bit, just so people can become more aware of what's happening and how they can help.
Sure. About 3 years ago, because of Winter's Dragon, Bandersnatch had to kind of move things along with the rights and deal with that. And Sony and Amazon ended up with the rights of Sony and then working with Amazon, and that kind of tugged us all around because we
Hmm.
had at the time we had 2-year contracts that would renew pretty much, and none of us really had issues, so we would just renew. And then we signed 10-year contracts, and that was really amazing. I was super excited. And then because of the show stuff, we had to bump it down to 3 years with a liquidation period. And that meant that the people who bought the rights wanted or seemed to want to, start their own thing and have the book rights be completed. So that meant anyone who had worked on the book series. So that includes Tavern Teas, the merchandiser, or the jewelry maker. I always mess up their name, but Aldi. They, everybody. So we found this out, and then all kind of tried to figure out what to do, what we could make, and then got to the end of the 3 years, which was this April, and now we're in a liquidation period, which means we have to get rid of everything that we made. Um, So, uh, that's been really tough because we've all spent a long time on the series and love the series. Many of us have read it, over 10 times.
It's a core part of your career.
Yeah. For me, it was my 20s. I'm
Hmm.
turning 30 next year. It was almost the whole scale of my 20s was working on Wheel of Time very closely with the creators and with all the other creators who work on it, and the fan base. And the fan base is a big family to me, so it's pretty tough to maybe lose that. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't be hired later to work on like the show stuff. But at this point, I don't think any of us will be working on the show itself because it seems a little late for concept art and things like that.
Hmm.
That is something I had wanted to do desperately because it's something I've always wanted to do, and because I love this series so much and had worked so much in the detail, I've become an expert in it. Um, and there are people like Linda Talagari who wrote the 13th Depository, the whole that website, which has every bit of information you could ever want on the Wheel of Time,
Oh
down
yeah, it's
to
incredible.
yeah.
Yeah.
And she does all that research herself. So a lot of us would have been really great resources. Now, Linda was never official, so that was even an extra mile. She never made any money off of any of that, but
Wow.
yeah, it's been tough. I'm hopeful, but at the same time, it's a big uh, company, so um, it's hard for them to hear about us, and I think they know about us, but you just never know who knows what, or what they're interested in doing. From here forward. But if people do really like the way that we have treated the series, me and the other official artists, the merchandisers, then they really need to say something, because none of those people are involved in the show right now, as far as I know.
So, is there any way you're aware of that people on Twitter or just in the community in general can help spread the word, help get some kind of notice going?
I don't know, if it be a petition or if it be um, messaging Raf. I've never heard his name, so I'm not sure how to
It's
pronounce it.
Rafe Judkins, I believe.
Rafe. Okay. Um, messaging him. I have messaged him plenty of times, but I think that it comes. The message is louder and clearer when it comes from the people who are consuming it more than the people who are making it.
Hmm.
So, I'm not sure at this point, but I think as much attention where it isn't ignorable.
Hmm. Yeah, that's the big level to hit. That wall you need to break down where it's okay. They can't just sweep it under the rug and hope it goes away, right?
Right, right. But we will see at this point. Uh, I am still a fan, and I'll always be a fan, and I hope that it does well. Um, I wanted to be a part of its creation. I don't know, how much I will be able to watch. I know that every bit of news is it's a double-edged sword for me. As a fan, I'm excited. As someone who worked on the series for so long and then has had it end very, what feels like abruptly. It Without a lot of say. I didn't get to say, "Hey, I don't want this to be over." It was just, it's over.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, I'll go ahead and link in the description of this video to a couple Twitter accounts like Amazon Studios. I'll try to find Sony's Studios equivalent so people can tweet at them, message them, do whatever they can. I mean, beyond that, I'm not sure
yeah.
much there is. But yeah, if anyone listening to this, you want to help, go ahead and, there'll be those Twitter accounts down below. Write a message, use all caps if you want to make sure it's heard because that's how the internet works. And
Because
I
you're
hope we
yelling.
can. And I hope we can get something going here because personally, even before I started my YouTube channel, a lot of your artwork helped me envision the entire series. It helped, it helped it feel more real. I think you did that for a lot of people. So I want to do whatever I can to help push your influence to be in the look of the show as much as possible because it's helped, I think, shape a vast majority of the fan base.
Well, thank you.
Of course.
I definitely get funny things sometimes, or people argue with me about, like I had somebody pretty early on argue with me that Nynaeve was a redhead. And I was like, it took me a little bit, and I realized that they were actually reading a translated copy that had been
Oh,
miswritten. And they had said that Nynaeve was the redhead instead of Rand. And so they were very confused. But I was like, "What do
that's
you
a
mean? Everyone in Evansville is brown hair."
that's a really strange error to happen in translation. That's interesting.
Yeah, apparently some of the foreign translations, like I actually had the Federation of Wheel of Time Italian fans write to me, and they asked us, "Can you please get these retranslated because we have no idea what's going on? Character names are switched and descriptions are swapped."
Wow.
And yeah, and I was like, "I'm just an artist. I would love to help you, but I don't know anyone. Like, I'll write whoever I know and see what they can do." And that was really a publishing thing. And I think that's an
See,
arm of a publisher, but
see, as from my perspective of someone who's just, English copies, that's all I've had. That's amazing to me that it doesn't go through some kind of rigorous translation process to make sure there are no errors. That those seem like fairly large errors.
right. Well, I guess it depends on when it's translated and who's doing it and what decade it is, and
Oh yeah. Well, there's
yeah.
there's been a lot of strange Wheel of Time stuff in translation people have sent to me. Outside
Hmm.
of actually in the books, just covers are really weird overseas occasionally.
Hmm.
And there's also the fact that I think every book was split into two for one translation, which it goes from a 14 book series to a 29 with New Spring,
Oh
which
yeah,
wow, that's
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but we have some really great covers as well with the Jean-Claude Van Rand on book 7, um, and who's blonde, and the romance novel Rand on book 6, with the Aes Sedai who's wearing a cape, not a shawl. Um,
Yeah. Well, you know, it gives the series its own little charm. Its own little corny
right,
covers.
right. My
I
favorite one is Baby Hand Rand on book 12. He has this little tiny fist.
oh, I haven't seen that. I need to look a little closer. I haven't had that
Yeah.
notice reported out to me. See,
He's got the cloth on it, but you can tell it's, like, itty bitty.
see, I have everyone continually point out to me that you can see Nicolas Cage on the cover of Eye of the World.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah, on the
that
back of Eye
one,
of the World, he's in the train of horseback riders. I think he's supposed to be Rand.
I thought it was supposed to be Matt because it has brown hair, but who
They
knows?
they all have brown hair. Also, there's too many riders, and Tom isn't there.
Yeah, it's you know early on you get a cover artist who just says they're going to do the work, I guess, and they do it.
Well,
And
Daryl
like,
K. Sweet was really close with Robert Jordan, but the issue ends up being a lot of the times with these covers is that and a lot of people will go quick to blame the artist, but really they don't get a very big description from the publisher. It's very small. It's like a paragraph,
mm,
and that's what they have to go off of. And so that's why you get things like Moraine being blonde on the cover of Eye of the World.
yeah, yeah, and yeah, there's a couple famous instances within the fantasy community where artists have been blamed, and you're right. It's largely, I imagine, not their fault. I mean, they're given these synopsises or little blurbs and descriptions, and they have to just go from there. And I don't
Right,
think
right.
publishers often realize how much detail is needed for a cover to be completely accurate.
Well, and that's why I think being a fan of the series was a major bonus for me is that I'd already read it, I already liked it, I already character personality, I think, is one of the most important things when painting a person is you need to know like who they are, like how they would stand and how they would
Hmm.
look at somebody. And when you don't have that kind of stuff, it just becomes very generic where you have maybe a meek character looking a little too strong.
See, yeah, and that's I can't imagine. I'm not artistically talented in any way, shape, or form. I can like if I draw stick figures, people have a hard time recognizing they're people. So
Thank you
I
for
can't.
not saying that you can't draw a straight line.
Well, I just mean like I can't connect my circles. They end up being like
Right.
ovals that overlap.
Hey,
um,
it's a sluice drawing, you know?
there you go. There you go. But it's I can't imagine how tricky it is to capture the personality of a character. But I can definitely spot when an artist has successfully done that.
Well, it's I think it's about caring about the source material as well as also getting the time to care and show that you care. And that's something I was very lucky in. That while I did have quick deadlines at times, I'm fast, but I also um, did usually get more time. And
Hmm.
as time went on, they trusted me enough that I would just say, "Hey, I'm going to do this," and they'd be like, "Okay, send it to us when you've painted it, and we'll critique it."
That's awesome. See,
Um,
I can't imagine putting a deadline on an artist. Like that's not how art works in my head.
oh, you have to, otherwise it'll never get done.
Fair enough. But it's like when people are like pressuring George R. R. Martin to release the next book, and I'm sitting here like he hasn't written it. He needs to think. That's how that works.
Right. Definitely leave him alone. For me, before I start a project, I have an idea. Like for the transition pieces, it kind of came out of the blue. I have a insomnia, and I was having a hard time falling asleep, and as usual. And I started to finally fall asleep, and I had this image just pop in my head of Rand, and he just kind of walked up, and he was surrounded by fire, and his clothes were burning. His Edmonds Field like sheep herders' clothes were burning away into the dragon. And I was like, damn it. So I sat up and sketched it really fast and then kind of went from there. And it was so popular that everyone's like, do Matt, do Matt. Like, okay. And they're like, do Perrin. And I was like, oh, okay. And then eventually I was like, well, I want to do Moraine. So, you know,
I think
and
that Rand one you just mentioned might be the work of yours I've seen in the most places. That thing is everywhere.
everywhere. Yeah. And I appreciate it. I've seen some people who are trying to get cast using it as a reference, and they do credit, which is very nice. And much appreciated because it is everywhere. And I get a lot of people who tell me he looks too old in that piece, but I mean it's supposed to be after book 11, and if you've gone through as much as he has, you'd look a little older than you are.
No, that's something I've always kind of assumed. Not maybe necessarily Matt as much, but both Perrin and Rand to me always
Mhm.
would age very rapidly throughout the series. They're not obviously looking like George Clooney by the end of it, but they're
Right, right.
looking beyond their years.
A little bit darker circles and a little heavier weight to their faces. And I had painted Rand before in the card art, which was the very first project I did with Tavern Teas. It was a 56 card, 65 character deck of poker deck of cards. And every card is different. It's a different character. And I'd painted Rand before, and I didn't like it. I didn't feel like it was him, but I didn't have the time to really revisit it. And at the time, I didn't have the skill set. So when I
Mhm.
was a bit better, I came back to it, and it was really important to me to show that haunted, sad look on his face, but that hard, steeled determination that he had to do what he had to do because he was the dragon.
Mhm. Which is one of his, big character motivators is not wanting to be where he is, but if he's going to do it, he's going to do it right. To boil it down and way oversimplify.
Right. And I think it shows the uh, wonderfulness of his writing that every character changes and grows as a person,
Mhm.
and that people's favorites shift throughout the series, except everyone loves Matt.
Well, even beyond that, it's amazing to me how many people upon rereads love characters they hated because suddenly they understand their motivations more. It's this is why Nynaeve acts this way. She's afraid that these people she loves are going to be hurt. That's why. Oh, that makes so much more sense. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, he had motivations for each character. Surprise.
Right. And we all have our own internal monologues and things that
Mhm.
kind of hold us back. And I think that's the thing a lot of people forget when they're reading is that, um, you're also hearing all their inner thoughts. And if someone else could hear all of your inner thoughts, would it really sound like you were perfect or, like you had it all together?
Probably no, no. Most people would probably want me to be committed. So.
Well, and a lot of us, we get it, we get internally angry or sad or, I love Nynaeve, and every time I read it, I love her more. Egwene is my favorite character of the entire series because I think she shows the most character growth,
Mhm.
and she really gets perspective. Like later on in the books when she realizes she's watching Elaine and Nynaeve bicker, she really realizes like, oh, I sounded like that, and
Mhm.
this is not productive.
Yeah, that's a very human moment to me. That's something that real people do encounter and think and realize.
Hmm. Hmm. And I
Uh,
think he did that well. He wrote like Pad and Fane very multi-complex. Even the villains were had very human feelings about things.
well, the interesting thing with Pot on Fane is you can, in my opinion, slowly see the different things working in his mind overtake each other. He
Hmm.
becomes more twisted very subtly. And if you pay attention, you can tell when it's more coming from the shadow and when it's more coming from Shardar Logoth.
Right.
In my mind, if you really, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I've always kind of felt there's the transition from one to the other.
No, I definitely got that, and I think that he is probably one of the most complex characters in the books. And I think Paul Belichick's version of him with a Murderil in the back and the Trollocs in the back is probably one of the best depictions of Fane's just insanity.
Hmm. Earlier, I mentioned how I never picture people right compared to the books when I first read them.
Mhm.
Do you know Marv from Home Alone? That was Fane for me for a long time, and
Yeah.
I still don't know why.
I think we all just kind of get different mental images and it sticks there for a while. Like for me, uh, Elida looked a lot like a woman I knew who was blonde, but just the personality was a dead ringer. And she was not that character, though, because the description was not at all matching. But
I really don't want to meet this person if her personality matches.
yeah. Yeah. So I think we all get that. And for me, I always had a really hard time picturing Lan um, until I drew him. Until I drew him for the second time. I also felt like I didn't get him right on the card. So that's why I did the transition poster for him because I wanted him to be striding forward with like murder in his eyes, but that cold, ice cold, scary um, Lan Batman thing that he has going on.
So before we recorded this, I said we would transition to something a bit more fun here at the end, and I would like to stick to that promise, and that is casting. Obviously, the fan base is a buzz right now with the recent casting news, and you obviously are one of the people in the world who has probably the most extensive knowledge when it comes to Wheel of Time and casting, with all the research you've done for drawing. And is there any actors that really stick out to you to be great representations for certain roles in appearance? Totally holding back. You know, don't worry about budget. Don't worry about if they're available. Just
Right.
anyone in your experience that you think fits.
Well, I always thought Rachel Wise was good for Maureen, but I think the choice of Rosamund Pike is a really good one.
Hmm.
As a short person, I'm a little sad that she's not short, just because it does actually matter. There is this perception that if you're short, you can't be taken seriously, or you can't be
Mm.
fierce or intimidating. And Maureen is very, in the beginning. She's, you're not sure if she's a villain, and
Hmm.
so I am a little sad about that, but she is a fantastic actress, who I think will has the right personality, and that's going to matter more at the end of the day.
Hmm.
Um, for I always thought like Mark Strong would be a good Lan. He has that crookedness in his nose and planes to his face, and a very intense look. But I think Lan is probably going to be one of the most difficult ones to cast. Oh, what's his name? Mads Mikkelsen is another one that's really good. He's a little too square jawed, but again, right personality. I think at the end of the day, unknowns for Matt, Perrin, and Rand, just because they are such iconic characters,
Oh
that
yeah,
you
I,
don't
I agree.
want someone else to be, like, oh, so and so, they were in this and that. And, a lot of people suggest actors that are just way too old for it.
Oh yeah, that is one of the constant. I got someone saying Michael C. Hall for Rand, and Michael C. Hall's in his 40s, and I'm like, bro.
Right, right. Yeah, I think I had several different actors that I had picked out. I can't access my folder right now to actually to read them because I don't have all this stuff memorized. But
No worries. I should have given you more notice on this. That's my bad.
that's okay. Yeah, I did have some actors for Rand, but they were all older, and so I would like piecemeal their faces and then go for imagination at that point. And Matt, same thing. And Perrin, there was another actor. I can send you actually links to all of these, but I don't remember their names.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think for a lot of them, it would be good to choose unknowns. But for certain characters like Moraine and Lan, you'd want to have like older, um, wizened actors who are a little more well known. And I think it's really important at the end of the day that they choose people who are closer to the ages, especially when it comes to the Aes Sedai and the women. Um, Older women do need to be represented. You
Mhm.
have people like, I mean, I would love to say Helen Mirren for Cadsuane. She'd be a fantastic Cadsuane. She can be very scary, but also very nice. But it's very important that, while the Aes Sedai have the ageless look, it doesn't mean no wrinkles or the porcelain. It almost looks like their skin is a little too stretched thin.
Mhm.
And for women, as a painter, I had a very difficult time getting the Aes Sedai look down, because when you're painting a woman, they have to show that they have facial expressions. You have to have lines in the face, but they have to be very minimal, because
Mhm.
the harder the line you show, the older a person looks, and usually the uglier everyone's going to say they are. So with the Aes Sedai, they have to be, very beautiful. A lot of them are very beautiful. Um, but
It's
when
I
I
think Wheel of Time has one of the highest percentages of just people being described as attractive. So many
right,
people are hot.
right, right, they're I'm expecting a lot more of a toning that down, which I think is good.
Mhm.
Um, but it is going to be important to not pick really young women and put a gray-haired wig on her.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I've always been this is something I've never heard anyone else say, but I've always liked Sigourney Weaver for Swan Sanche. She doesn't match the physical appearance, but I think her presence is something that fits really well.
Right.
So I don't. I'm much more of a when it comes to casting. Yeah, if you can get looks, that's fine, but I just want talented actors, and I know a lot of people disagree with me on that, and I think that's fine. Like I get the argument for trying to be as close to the source material as possible, but I'm so tired of seeing actors who just pull me out of a scene.
Right.
I want that. I've gone as far as to saying, hey, if a black guy nails auditioning Perrin, give him it. Like that to me is how far I'll go with it. And some people have like, oh no, I think they should match the actual description more. Some people just get more
Well,
racist about it, and it's just
yeah.
there's two
Well,
different.
I've had a lot of discussion with people about the because there's no African continent in this world. He
Right.
doesn't describe anyone that way. He describes like the tone of the shade
Hmm.
of their skin, like with Tuan, that it's like dark as midnight. She's very dark skin. But the Edmonds Fielders are described as very tan, like farmers.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of people who have come back to me and said, you paint all of them too white. I will say, I think I did paint all of them a little too pale,
Mm.
but on some of them. Some of the pieces, especially with Egwene, she's usually using like the Sadar. And so there's a lot of white reflection and makes
Hmm.
someone look brighter. But they are not. I would think that more like a South American look might be good. And so yeah, I mean there's room for lots of diversity in the Wheel of Time, and
Hmm.
it's not like the Lord of the Rings where it's a bunch of very white European Anglo-Saxon looking people. Um,
See, that was my biggest problem with Game of Thrones. So many just bearded white dudes. I couldn't keep them
mhm.
straight. I was like, wait, why is he mad? What's this beard? Especially beards. I don't know if I'm like mildly face blind, but if someone has a beard, I have a really hard time keep like
Yeah.
telling them apart.
So
And
you
that
should
goes
grow
for
one and be like, "Who am I?"
you.
Yeah, well, I think that they do have room to expand on it and to be a little more modernized. And the Saldians look a little more mix of Asian, Middle Eastern.
Hmm.
Um, so you have that room, and the Shanshan are not entirely African American looking.
Hmm. I was
So
under that false conception for a while until someone corrected me.
right.
But yeah, they're more diverse than that.
Yeah, well, her Tuan's right hand, I'm forgetting her name, it starts with an S. She is blonde and white.
Hmm.
Um, I don't remember, but and it's funny because I've actually only read the series 1.5 times, but I've worked on it for so long that I just remember all these details. Um, so for me, I'm the kind of person that I can read something once and then it's just kind of I've got the image and it's there forever.
Hmm.
Um, Yeah, I mean, we will see. I'm nervous as a fan. I'm very nervous about what they do, especially as somebody who's worked on it. That um, the details do matter. Um, Suan, I would say, is just Sigourney Weaver's a little too old. She's in her 60s, and Suan started getting her agelessness around her, I think, her 40s or 30s. They
Right.
both, her and Maureen in New Spring are like 2025,
Right.
and then by Eye of the World, they're in their like 50s ish.
Yes.
So even Rosamund Pike is too young.
Well, I think
But
that kind of plays into the agelessness look maybe a little bit. I'm not sure though.
right, I still think she's perfect. She's good at looking older than she is or looking younger than she is, which
Right.
I think really that's true agelessness.
Hmm. Absolutely. Um, well, I don't want to take up the whole rest of your evening here, so I'll go ahead and start wrapping this up and say, guys, if you have not already, check out Ariel Burgess's whole portfolio linked in the description down below. You can follow her on Twitter and Instagram. Be sure to go check her out. A lot of her stuff is still available, and it's well worth the look. Thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Real quick, you can still get most of my stuff on my Society 6 until October. After October, we can no longer sell any of our Wheel of Time merchandise.
Did you hear that, everybody? It's a race. You got to get there now.
Yeah, and if you want anything signed, I have very very few pieces left. So I take private messages and stuff like that. But I want to make sure that everybody has their stuff. I just mailed something to someone in Australia the other day. So
Oh, wow. Very cool.
yeah,
All right. Well, thank you
yeah.
so much. And everyone, please go sure to check her out. Thanks.
Thank you.